Good evening. My name is Stephen. I'm going to talk about adventures in pricing. And I really wanted to speak about this today, mostly because of this. Because it's one of the areas I've found to be massively impactful for startups, but almost nobody talks about it. I gave bits of this presentation to a CEO's forum maybe about 3 months ago. And I gave it hoping I was going to get a lot back. And actually, I got almost nothing back, because it seemed to be that that audience had not really thought very much about pricing. It was something that maybe they thought of early in the business, and then it just rumbled on over time. So I've spent a lot of the last year thinking about pricing, working with an enterprise sales team who are also doing a lot of thinking about pricing. So I'm going to take you a little bit through that journey and show you a little bit of thinking on it. I really see myself in this as in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. So I don't know everything, but I know a little bit, and I've thought about this quite a bit. What I really want to do is introduce you to a few topics and ways of thinking about pricing. So when you come to think about your own pricing, you will understand what that means for how you build your product, how you build your sales teams, how you work that into your business as a whole. It'll get a bit clearer as I go on. So I'm a growth guy. 2 years ago, I said, I've had enough of London. Goodbye, I'm going to go do something else. I've done consulting here for 2 years. It's doing my head in. I want to go do something else. So I joined a Polish startup, worked for 6 months in Poland, and then went over to San Francisco and helped them open an office in San Francisco for 6 months. During that time, I also was a product owner. And I got the Scrum Product Owner certification. So not only was I working on the marketing side, I also did a lot on the product side and worked with them as they grew their sales team over the year. And that's the sales team. As I found out over the years, the VPs of sales in startups, the first couple are often seen as roadkill. That you have to churn through a couple of VPs of sales to figure out what it actually is that they need to do and what your business needs to do to be able to support a proper sales team. And when I left, we had a really big sales team and had taken quite a big journey over a year. So I'll talk you through a little bit of that. So let's have a pricing page adventure. I went to the Wayback Machine, and I took snapshots of the pricing page over about a year, and it tells a really amazing story. So the company's called Codility. I better give you a little bit of background on the company. It's called Codility. It's kind of recruiting software. It helps you understand how good a developer is. So if you're Google and you get 100,000 developer applicants, you want a little bit of automated help to help you figure that bit out. Right, so we start off, when I arrive, we have this. It's super complex. It's got a whole lot of random stuff you don't want to be showing people at the bottom. It's got a whole lot of things that nobody actually knows what they are when they're trying to buy it. And it's just super complex. So at this stage, this company has been running for 5 years. They've had no marketers. They've got 2 really new salespeople. You want really salespeople, they had other roles, and the company decided, we want to try sales, so will you guys do sales for us? That's how you get to your first VP of sales roadkill, by just pushing somebody into that spot. So this is where we started. The next version, you can see they're just trying to clean it out, make it easier for people to understand. They had a little bit of customer feedback, a little bit of digging into the data, figuring out what works, what doesn't work. This is pretty much my first iteration when I joined. So a lot of internal discussion and a lot of digging into data. So you'll see we've stripped out the $49 on the left and gone down to only 4. So if I flip you back here, it looks like we might have lots of $600 a month customers, but actually we didn't have any. We had like maybe 40% were basic, 45% were simple. There were a couple of people on the other ones, right? So those things on the left are what people would happily buy online, whereas the stuff on the right, just nobody was buying it. You've got to remember there was no marketing, no sales team. There was nothing other than discover this website. The website convinces you to buy it, and either you do or you don't. So we go here, we decide we need to earn a bit more money off each of our clients. And we're trying to kind of figure out, we have a little bit more, kind of the first couple of salespeople, we've got a customer success person, so we have a little bit more information coming in from our clients that we're trying to reflect here. This is where we got to next. This is when we started to have an American sales team on board. So the first thing they did in America was hire a couple of just really good kind of AE level salespeople, just your kind of basic, not a VP of sales, not a beginner, just somebody who's really solid. And those people went out, they spoke to a lot of clients, and they came back and they said, we can make a hell of a lot of money if you just make everybody speak to us. Right? So this is the goal of this. The goal of this is we're starting to understand that we don't care about the people who only want to spend $49 a month. What we care about is, actually, we don't really care about this $199 very much. What we want is people to speak to our sales team, and the sales team to maximize the amount of revenue they can get out of it. Then we went to this, and there's nothing to buy online. You can only speak to a salesperson. And now they're at this. So they've got so far that they feel both of these two on the end are pretty much the same. So have a free trial, and then we're going to sell to you as hard as we can anyway. And they're trying to push some people to that middle one. So what the sales guys figure out is there are some people that are just crazy. You know, they'll ask for the moon, you can't give it to them, and then you just push them to the website, say, go buy that thing. And then the salespeople move on to kind of the sales calls that they feel are going to be worthwhile to them. So that was an interesting journey, because we moved from people on, you know, a huge chunk of the client base on $49 a month with a lot of churn, so not getting a lot of value out of them. And over a year, adding salespeople and kind of playing with our pricing to where we're pushing people directly to the sales team, and their initial goal was $3,000 per client. So that's what they were trying to get out of each client, right? So they didn't care about anything less than that. It was, if you didn't want to pay at least that, then you were probably the wrong client for them, right? So that's a massive, massive change in kind of how the business saw itself. And alongside the pricing change is also this structural change within the business team of the business. So one of the things that I had to do there on the marketing side is to help the sales team a bit to understand all the leads that are coming in for them. So this is the lead gen page, and I'm just added a box that says, that helps people self-select, right? So that if somebody's just looking to improve their coding, they don't bother the sales team, right? The sales team only gets the people that are looking to be sold to. Not necessarily a pricing thing directly, but it's something that helped the sales team only focus on people who wanted to be sold to. So alongside kind of optimizing your pricing, you also want to be optimizing the time of your sales team to be selling into only the people who can buy and who want to buy. You don't want them wasting a lot of time talking to people that will never buy. So if I talk a little bit about the money. So this was the beginning of last year. There was one marketer, which was me. There were 2 salespeople in Poland, but just general people that had been promoted into that position. And a year later, there's still one marketer, but 12 salespeople and a customer relationship manager. So within those 12 salespeople, you have, within the year, we had 3 VPs of sales. That's the kind of sales roadkill. AEs, SDRs, so basically people doing outbound and outreach and organizing calls. So a lot of growth on the sales side, pushing a lot of growth on the pricing side. And when I started, so you'll see for that first one, with no sales team, everything came through the website. And when I left a year later, everything was going through the sales team. And that was a change between people putting their credit cards into the website versus the sales team writing invoices out to the finance departments of larger companies. So a really massive change in not just the change in how we were charging for stuff made us change how the sales team worked, made us change actually all our own kind of workflows within the company as well. So just changing a few things on the website has a lot of impacts on a whole lot of other things if you want to get those other things right. So the result from that year is it's a 5-year-old business. Our goal was to do 4x growth in that year, and we did that. We definitely could have done a billion things better in that year, but we still kind of got to where we wanted to via just testing stuff. And testing, like when you're testing pricing, that has like all these unintended consequences that you don't realize. Is that you suddenly have people on all kinds of different packages in your database, and when you're making changes to your product, to your front end, you still have to realize we've got like 35 different packages that we've sold people over the last 5 years, and we have to honor all of those, right? And then we're thinking, okay, how do we get people off these packages onto something else? So it's you take a lot of weight onto yourself if you change your pricing, but I think you have to change your pricing just to learn and figure out what's going on. So some things happening in the background. So just very simple stuff, lifetime value. So when I joined this company, they were very much developer product focused. They weren't really thinking in terms of business at all. And it was only when they wanted to go out and raise money that they went out to VCs. VCs asked them some very normal VC type questions like, can we have this data? And they went, well, we've never really thought about it in that way. So you can imagine just very simple stuff, like we're charging $49 a month. People weren't really even hanging around for 6 months. So it was a 4 to 5 months before people left. So you're getting $300 per user. But if you can force people to pay a yearly contract, you can up that. If you can double your prices, you can up that. And if you can do both, you're a hell of a lot further ahead than you were. And that seems quite difficult, but it's actually quite easy. You just double your prices, right? So if you lose half your clients, you still come out ahead, right? So if you do both of those things, you're moving to a different client base of people who are paying you more and who are staying longer. So the key thing we found when we did that is we also focused our energy differently. So everything was focused on people who are likely to stay longer and were likely to give us more money. Before, you had all these voices coming in from different clients, and we were treating, the guy that was paying us $49 a month the same as the woman that was paying us on the high end, right? When really we should have been treating them very differently. So it wasn't an intentional thing. We didn't really think of it in that way at the time, but that's what happened. It allowed us to focus more on these high-paying, closer to enterprise level people. Something else we found out with our product, we got burned by churn. So the $49 a month people churned really quickly. And that's really because they were hiring like one person a year. So they would use our product to hire that person and then go, well, we don't need this product, right? But the people that paid us more stuck around because they were hiring all year. So they were keeping us on the books the whole year. And really that's basically that. We were trying to sell subscription products to people that just needed a one-off product. And that's what we learned in the year. If you're going to try to do that, you're going to have a very unhappy time because you're going to have a lot of churn. You're going to have a lot of unhappy customers because you've kind of forced them to buy in a way that they didn't really want to buy and didn't fit. It'd be much better to find people like these who do want to use your product all year round and are happy to pay that subscription. And you want to listen to them and find more people like them. This was a killer thing for us, is make sure your products expire. It's like, if you're trying to figure out churn, which is something VCs really like, if you sell people something and that thing never expires, you can't figure out your churn. So some of the very earliest sales things they were doing was selling these tests. And they were saying, well, don't worry, give us the money and the test will never expire. You can use it whenever you like. So when we came like 5 years later, there were people that used us 4 years ago that had these unexpired tests, but they were not, they hadn't thought of us in 4 years. But because their tests never expired, they were still technically a live client, right? And we had to do all kinds of crazy dances around numbers and fudge stuff to get around this fact. So it was very clear learning for us was if we were selling something, we had to have an expiration date because that helped us calculate churn correctly. So there was a lot of like other underlying metrics that really helped. But before that, you probably would have no idea that that was going to be the impact later on, right? So selling things, if your product doesn't expire, you pretty much have an infinite lifetime of that customer. And what you're really trying to figure out is what is my actual lifetime value, right? So you want to even if it's a year. In our case, we just took some of that in the fudge and just said, assume if they haven't logged on or used the product in a year, then they've churned, and kind of made a bit of a fudge to get our values for churn and our lifetime values. But what you also find is if you make that fudge and then another fudge and then another fudge and another fudge, what you come out with is just a very crappy number that you can't really trust. So it's basically just a really strong argument for knowing what your business KPIs are when you start, because this was a business that never did and never focused on it. And actually bringing in the sales team, bringing in kind of pricing and looking at it in more depth and looking at data and numbers, and then trying to go out to VCs and have a talk to them based on that, created huge cultural change in the business, to the business becoming more business focused, to caring about these numbers a lot more, to looking at this data and making sure that the business has clean data. It's after like 5 years as a B2B SaaS business. It's a bit late, but better late than never. Things like VCs love LTV, churn, MRR, ARR. There's a whole lot of these little 3-letter acronyms that go along with this stuff. So I'll give you a few references at the end, and it's just handy to know what these mean and be able to use them in a conversation. If you're going to speak to VCs, if you're speaking to people on the sales side, if you're speaking to product people as well. So we were really pushed into enterprise because that's kind of what the product was made for, and we kind of discovered that by the pricing, by having salespeople, by having this feedback loop from the salespeople. So what we figured out was our product was more powerful for bigger companies, right? The bigger the company was, the more the more value we delivered you because we solved the bigger problem for you. That meant we could charge more, and then we could figure out how to upsell. So we charged you more, you hung around a lot more, which meant we could get more data from you, which meant we could understand you better, build more products for you, and then upsell you onto those products as well. So it's a little bit of a positive spiral. When you're trying to sell the wrong thing to people, then none of that kind of works together. But if you get onto the right path, people stay, they give you good feedback, you make better products, you can make more money out of it. And a very key thing is these are the kind of people that would happily pay upfront on a yearly basis. So I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. But I want to just talk a little bit about the changes we had to make based on this pricing and sales function. As a business team, we had to figure out how to learn what enterprises wanted. So before we had very much of a business team, it was just product people pretty much doing whatever the hell they liked. And as soon as we added salespeople in, they were like the voice of the customer, incredibly loud and very insistent. So big American sales team going, I want this thing, build this thing, because you need to build that so I can sell to meet my goals. Right? And then we had to figure out in a very kind of passive business full of previously just developers who didn't operate in quite that way, actually, how are we going to put these two cultures together? How are we going to actually take this new input of salespeople, but actually clients, and turn that into our product? So there was a lot of learning in that year of how to actually do this. It's not just like you plug something in or you change something and magically it works. The sales team had to learn how to sell to enterprise. So we had salespeople, and they were great selling to small businesses, medium-sized businesses, But the difference, selling, £1,000 a year to £10,000 a year to £100,000 a year deal, it's completely different people and completely different sales skills are needed. So either you have to hire in the right level of salespeople, or you've got to give a hell of a lot of training to people to get them to move into different values. So what you're doing when you're just on a phone selling somebody like a 500 quid a month deal versus a 5,000 quid a month deal, actually that 5,000 quid a month deal, that person probably has to go in to the business, shake some hands and meet some people. Really, really different dynamics. Some people are suited to one rather than the other. And the product team had to build for that enterprise, right? So they had to figure out how to take customer requirements on board, how to communicate back out to the customers, okay, we are building this on this time frame, this is when you can expect it. Stuff that they'd never been held to account for doing before. So a key thing around pricing strategy is it tells you what team to build. So if you get your pricing wrong, there's two things that happen. One is the very obvious thing. You're leaving a lot of money on the table. You can't build your teams as fast. You can't grow as fast. But the thing I learned is that you can also build the wrong teams. So if you build the wrong sales team for the pricing model you're trying to follow, that's going to be very difficult for you. You may have the right pricing model, but if you have the wrong sales team pushing it, you're not going to have success, and the other way around. So this is how I look at it. It's how do you get to 100 million? So here you can have 10 customers giving you 10 million a year, all the way down to 10 million customers giving you $10 a year. And you figure out where you are within there. So I have what I use called the credit card line. Basically cuts through here. Everything below here can go onto a credit card. Everything above needs more than a credit card. So this gives me enterprise and not enterprise. Basically, as a marketer, I can sell to these people and get them to convert, but I can't here. I need a sales team. And you can imagine that first business model at $49 a year. We're over here, doesn't need a sales team. But if we're trying to get 3, 4, say 30 to 40 grand a year out of big enterprise clients, you're going to need something quite different. So that's the difference, right? One decision maker on a credit card. So that'll be a CTO, a CMO, VP of sales saying, I want this product for my team. And they put it on their credit card. Once you get up here, you're starting to have an amount of money that doesn't fit onto a credit card. So they're asking for invoices. But there's probably also multiple decision makers involved. So you've probably got the CTO, as we did a lot. We'd have the human resources person would be at the meeting, the CTO would be at the meeting, and maybe the CEO or somebody else. So from the sales side, because we want these kind of deals, we need to operate very differently. So we take like a sales engineer along who would speak to the CTO, and we take a recruiter salesperson who'd speak to the in-house recruiter, right? And we found very quickly that our recruiter who turned into a salesperson just could not speak to a CTO, right? You just did not ever want that to happen. And you wouldn't like our sales engineer ever to speak to an in-house recruiter, right? Because those sides just speak very different languages. So you've got multiple decision makers, you need different types of teams to sell in. So here's just an example. So down here, this is me as a marketer. I'm selling things online. Maybe I'm a bookstore and I'm selling books, right? I don't need a sales team. And you could make that argument up here. But you get to a point where you need some type of sales. So that might be an SDR. That might be somebody who's just sitting in the office doing a little bit of inbound, answering some emails, answering some questions about the product, helping people just with their initial questions. But over here, you start to need much more developed salespeople, right? So here is pretty much where we were in San Francisco. So we had good kind of SDRs, people sitting in the office, emailing, like identifying prospects, emailing them, and setting up calls for our AEs. So that was the salespeople. They would take you through a demo, they'd pitch up at your office, shake your hand, try and build a bit of a relationship with you. So as you go up, that whole relationship side becomes more and more important. So you can imagine here things like this is, I don't know, government, fighter jets, right? You're on a 2 or 5 year sales cycle. You're trying to have somebody build relationships over a very long period of time. So the teams you need to build are completely different through this whole, through the whole list, if you like, from you just need a marketer all the way up to like, you really need really good face-to-face salespeople who'll get on a plane and fly to the other side of the country. So you have this whole range of business teams you need to build based on the pricing strategy you want to follow. So a little bit of why we push yearly sales. So this is something I've seen more and more, especially as I try to buy software myself for startups. This is HubSpot. This is the HubSpot sales page, pricing page. And you'll see everything here is billed annually, right? I wanted to buy HubSpot, and basically it's 20 grand up front. You pay for a year. And actually that was too much for us, so we had to bail out. We couldn't do that at the time. But losing us was okay because of the value HubSpot get from charging other people up front. So this is an amazing illustration from the blog's called, it's Tom Tunger's. He's a VC in the States. Does a really amazing blog. I'll link to it in the end. This is getting paid exactly the same amount over time, but using different payment strategies, right? So how you are paid over time affects how much money you have at the bank, in the bank, over, this is a 2-year period, right? So this is annual prepay. Because you're being paid up front, you get all your money up front before you have to deliver the service. And that means, so this is the worst position to be in, right? This is, I get paid a year after delivering my service. And I'm struggling this whole year because my cash flow is really low. So you don't want this, but if you're in this position where a company pays you up front for a whole year, you can hire more people, right? You can build out your product faster, you can hit your roadmap much quicker. So you would always much rather be this company because you can grow faster, but also you're going to have a lot less internal stress because you're not having to deal with cash flow issues for that entire time. So that's why you'll see this big push to people trying to sell you yearly deals and giving you quite a big discount to that yearly deal because they'd much rather have that money right now and help them with what they want to do with that over the next year. So this is a little bit of thinking I'm doing now for a new product I'm working on. One of the bits I see trip people up a lot is don't think about how much your product costs you. This is what Codility were doing. They were selling a test for $2, right? It costs us about $1 for somebody to take our test, so we'll sell it out at $2. But the person who's using that test is about to hire a developer for like $120,000 a year in the States. Like, why on earth would you sell your test for $2 when the value you're providing is so much more? So really that last year was kind of unhooking ourselves from what it costs us to build the platform and actually looking at how much value are we providing some of the world's biggest tech companies, right? And when you swap your thinking around, it makes you a lot happier about charging a lot more money. Something I learned from the sales team, right? So peg yourself to the top performer. So when our first American VP of sales came in, that was his process. Everybody knows in recruitment, LinkedIn is the best piece of software, and it was about $7,000 a year. So that's what people in the States think of when they're buying this kind of software. You can't be more than $7,000 a year because you're probably not going to be better than LinkedIn or more useful than LinkedIn to a recruiter. But you want to be about there, right? Anything less, and you're probably leaving a lot of money on the table. So if you want to sell yourself as a premium recruitment product, you're kind of pegging yourself to the top performer in that area, which was LinkedIn. So that allowed the business to go, all right, okay, now we're kind of happy with losing the $49 a month because we're seeing this thing through a completely different lens. So here's just something I do practically. So list of all the recruitment bits of software and just trying to keep an eye on what they do. Right? How many customers do they have? What product features do they have? and kind of pricing per month. So you're kind of deciding, do I want to be at the bottom of the market, in the middle of the market? Do I want to be a premium brand right at the top? Okay, if I want to be a premium brand, what do I need to make sure I have? Because I need to compete with other brands, right? So it's very simple to do, but it's kind of a little bit at the core of deciding or understanding the pricing in your area. So let's say I have a little product like this, helping startups build products. It's a little bit of a combo of Trello, which business teams tend to use to organize themselves, and things like Track, which development teams tend to use to organize themselves. There's not much that sits over the top and does both. So we're thinking, maybe we want to build something like that. So first thing to do, go to Wikipedia, get a list of everybody. So I got a list of the top 50 kind of bug tracking, issue tracking bits of software, and I do the same. Right, so here they are, ordered by kind of when they launched, by date. And I'm looking at the business model for each of these. I'm trying to decide if they're actually a competitor or not. So some are so old, I'm saying they're not really a competitor for us. And I'm trying to identify who our real competitors are. Some people are so enterprise that there's no way that we as a new company would ever want to compete with them in any way. Like, we're just in completely different spaces. I want to figure out, can I steal their users? So like, who do I think I could steal? I don't know, Track, right? Track was this thing that I showed you before. Was this. If you try and make business people work in this, they go crazy. It just doesn't work. So I think actually maybe I can get small startups who are using Track to switch over. And then what I'm doing, this is one of the key bits, is I'm finding what each of these things charge by. And it turns out in this area, there's really only 3 things: users, the number of users of the product, the number of projects you can have in the product, and the storage, so the amount of data you can have. And everybody charges by some variation of that. And then I'm really digging down into each of these. So I have a screenshot of the pricing page of all 50 of those, just so I keep an eye on that. And I can go back over time, like I did with the Codility ones, and see, okay, what's changed in the last 6 months? Who's changed their pricing strategy, right? So I'm seeing how different people are kind of positioning themselves, what they think is important in terms of their sales, but also in terms of their pricing. You know, you've got things like this. You have 6 different choices to make versus this one, where you basically have 1 choice to make. Right? So you have people are doing such different things, but I think in terms of the pricing, figuring out, you know, again, that kind of pegging yourself. So let's say here, our sales guys need to pitch up against these guys, right? The sales guys are in a meeting. The client says, well, what about this? These guys only charge this. And your sales team have something prepared to go, they're a $20 a month company. We're a $1,000 a month company. You can't take those guys seriously, right? So a sales team will have something prepared for each of these if they come up in a sales call to say, oh, what about this? We're also considering this, right? And they may go, might be on pricing, and maybe on features, and maybe on users, maybe on a whole lot of different things. So that's why it's good just to have that basic view of all your competitors and what they're doing with pricing. So thinking about what we're doing now with Team Pilot is a little bit of a leaf out of Slack's book, right? We know that we want to start at the bottom with 1 decision maker with a credit card. We know how important having low churn and high retention rates are. So we want to think really long term. We need early users, so that says some kind of free or freemium model. And we're just people who want to keep it super simple, right? So if I look at all of those, the fog bugs one with 1 decision to make, that works for me, and it also works for my business partner, and I think would work for a lot of people that we would hope would buy it. So the thing that Slack does really well is it gives you a free amount until you put in so much that it's a real pain in the ass to swap to something else, right? And that's exactly what we want to do. We want to do the same, but based on probably megabits or gigabits of data storage. So you get an amount that's free, and you start using it, and then you pay a very tiny amount each month. So as you start using it, maybe in the first month where you cross the threshold, you'll pay $1. And the next month you'll pay $2. Right? So it's a bit sneaky. It's about like going from free to creeping up. And what I'm trying to avoid is this kind of stuff, where somebody's on this, and then they kind of break this, and then you've got to sell them onto this, and then you've got to sell them onto this, and then you've got to sell them onto this. I think you really want something, well, we really want something which just in the background slowly grows over time, and you never have to have these kind of conversations with people. Oh, sorry, you had 86 projects. You have 86 projects now, so now you need to buy the 200 projects bundle. That's a super difficult conversation. And I've sat in rooms with salespeople trying to have that conversation. It's really difficult for them because you have to justify. The client goes, I only need one more project. Why do I have to buy another 115? So a little bit about trying to match your pricing model with what people actually want. So I'm going to end with 3 resources that you need. This one is killer, SaaS benchmark spreadsheets. I'll send it around in an email afterwards. So it's a lot of SaaS companies where they have shared their own data. So you can benchmark yourself against a lot of very well-known SaaS companies. Where we're looking at things like churn, right? So look at that list and say, well, if we're churning at 20% a month, that seems to be really bad compared to what all these very successful SaaS companies are doing. So it's always handy to have a reference point of what other companies have done. Jason Lemkin, VC in the States, absolutely worth a follow. His blog's called SaaSter, really amazing stuff on the sales side mostly of startups, as well as Tom Tunga's, also venture capitalist in the States. So they're 2 guys that write a lot about sales and pricing in a very easy to access way. I love, like Tom's newsletter is the only newsletter I subscribe to. It's like super simple, really powerful, really bite-sized stuff. So that's it from me. Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, I'll come down. We'll do 3 questions. I will come to you in the purple shirt.
Yeah, thanks. That was excellent. The first bit with Codility, when you work through the pricing stuff and finding out and got the sales strategy right, you didn't talk much about the competitors. You came well onto competitors as we got on. Yeah. Oh, great. But can we get a little sense of at that early stages did you just say who cares, just go sell, or how did it work?
Thanks. That's really a great question because Codility originally built that market. They were the first people that built that piece of software. And over time, there's one big company in the States called HackerRank. It started up in Silicon Valley, who became more well-known, I guess, than Codility. And that's what sparked them going, to hell with this. We need to open an office in San Francisco. We want that crown back. Who are these guys taking our business? So other than HackerRank, there really wasn't very much out there. But they did have a big impact on the business because they were much more agile product-wise. So they'd be pushing stuff live almost every week. They'd have a new product. They were just pushing out, I guess, and seeing if people liked it or not. And our product guys were looking at that, and our sales guys were going, HackerRank have released this thing today, where's ours, right? And that pushed a lot of change. Having that really good competitor in that kind of product area pushed us a lot. There are a lot of people trying to get into that area because it's, recruiting is super lucrative. But really, it was only that one. But sometimes that can be really great because it gives you that one thing you want to aim at and knock over, right? So if you get competitive people, just give them that's our goal. We want to take that back from them, and that's what we're going to do. And that was really motivating for the sales guys in the US, right? Because they were competitive people. That's exactly what they wanted. Cool.
Thanks.
No?
Hi. When did Codility realize that they've got to change from the cost model to the value model? That's my first question. The second question is, if you know anyone at Codility, can you tell them to improve .NET support, please?
I don't think I can do the last one. Sorry, the first question was?
When did they learn to change from the cost model to the...
That was really the first American VP of sales they hired, who came in. The one thing about Poland is there's not many other startups. So they were really just doing whatever they thought was the best thing at the time without anybody to bounce it off. And then when we got more like American salespeople, it was like, and a VP of sales, right? So he actually came from HackerRank. So they poached him from HackerRank, said, come on. He only lasted a month, but in that month, made a really big change to the culture of the company. And that was it. So if I'm coming in here, we need to make this much money. And I know how to make it, and I've done this before. So that really came down to having a really, the first really experienced salesperson who'd been there and done it before, and was kind of bringing his contacts as well as his expertise. So I think that's something you can't, downplay, is having really experienced people come into a startup. I experienced it a lot myself because I've been through it, and I quite often work with very new startups. You're changing the culture a lot when you come in, but you're also telling them things that they don't necessarily want to hear, and you have to change, and people don't like change. So there's a lot of stuff going on when you're doing that, and it's not necessarily easy, but it made a really big impact on Codility. Cool. I'm going to ask the purple dude at the end. Sorry, guys.
So first and foremost, great presentation. I think a lot of what you said really resonated with me because I work in a similar space, and I love the fact that you brought up a lot about Jason Lemkin, which is a great guy in the space. So my question is, and Jason says this as well, when people have a lot of experience in the startup space / freemium space, when they go around to their second time around, they tend to go upmarket. Mm-hmm. But I'm really, really curious for your company, why you decided to go the other way and go more freemium instead of going upmarket.
Well, for my company, it's because we're so super early, right? So that's the plan. So what a lot of companies do. So either, I don't know, you're the guy from Slack and you've been successful and you raise money without really having a product because people believe in you, but first. Believe in your previous success, so you can take that VC money and you can aim straight at the enterprise level if you want to. They didn't necessarily, but that's the way you get earned money. If you haven't succeeded, you're pretty much bootstrapping, which we are. So we know we can compete at the bottom, but we can't, on that list is IBM something, right? That they sell in as an issue tracker in a $20 million deal with some big company, and it's one part of something. We just don't have a product. Well, one, we don't have a product that can compete with that. We don't have sales teams. We don't have the connections. We don't have the time and the money that it would actually take for a salesperson to go out and close those deals. So what we want is a little, as Fergus was saying, we need cash now, and we need some users now. We have a very short horizon, right? In this next 6 months, we want some users. We want to get a little bit of money in the door, and we want to learn from those users, right? So that's just step one, and a lot of other steps, right? Yeah. So I think a lot of companies, you start out freemium, you figure it out, and your plan is over time you're going to end up at enterprise charging a hell of a lot of money, but you've got to figure out how to get there first. Right. Thank you very much, everyone.